Welcome back to Confront Your Mind. I'm Jolynn,
I'm Tiffany. Join us as we talk about how to confront the uncomfortable in life,
while also allowing space for laughter as we learn.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome.
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 Can I read the definition?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just feel like being the definition
Pop off
girl
on the
today.
definition today.
The Oxford Dictionary defines imposter syndrome as the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own effort or skills.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good definition, I feel like.
Yeah, I really liked that definition.
I feel like you say that literally every time.
I do. I love definitions. That's why they're a part of our podcast.
No, I mean, you're not lying.
I do. I think definitions are so important.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it is that part of like that persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved, or has been legitimately achieved. And I know that's something that...
Yeah, I feel like that's a part of it too. It's not only like whether you deserve it, but it's like that you aren't there. You know, like you haven't made it.
Right. It's like that part of like seeing if like, I don't know. I feel like we both have struggled with that in the past. Obviously, that's why we're talking about it. We only talk about
Brought to you by our struggle.
This podcast is sponsored by Jolynn and Tiffany's struggles. The truth in that though. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think talking about the way that this podcast is sponsored, do you want to share your story with imposter syndrome? Your personal experience?
Sorry, I was like...
Love the look that you gave me.
I was like, what are you saying?
You're like, what are you talking about? I have zero experience.
I was like,
imposters.
do we get a sponsor? Like, what are you talking about? About to drop a bomb on me. Okay. No, yeah.
What if that's how I told you we got a sponsor? Like... This podcast is brought to you by Prime Energy. Just kidding.
Just kidding. It's not.
Never. That's not it. If anything, this podcast is brought to you by Chirama. I'm just joking.
But what did you say? Oh, yeah, how I've experienced. I've experienced
with imposter syndrome.
So I need to like read the definition again. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've got something. So,
all right, let's go.
I feel like
Okay, let's go.
I feel like one of the main things that I've experienced imposter syndrome with is my career as a nurse.
Yeah.
Because so it's really weird in yeah. There's a lot of hair on this.
I think the cats were on this week.
I'm just snuggled with my microphone.
Probably.
But yeah, no, it's whenever I first started nursing, like as a new nurse, I worked on a unit with a lot of not older nurses, like they weren't old, but they were older than me. And while there were a good group of like the newer ones of us that had just started, there were also people that had like been nurses for like 5, 10, whatever years. And so, like you hear those people and you compare yourself to those people, which I think that's a huge part of imposter syndrome is like comparison.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes you invalidate yourself just because like you're not like this person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way that I experienced it in my first job, was that I looked at these people that had been nurses for so long, or even like 5 years, because you learn a lot like every day in nursing. Honestly, it's like you learn something new every day. And so by the time you get to 5 years, like you've got all this knowledge. And so like I looked at people that were 5 years down the road, and instead of saying like, oh yeah, like that's gonna be me in 5 years, I was like, wow, like
why
couldn't be me in 5. No, I just was thinking like, oh, like I'm never gonna be able to reach that.
Oh yeah. It's like cutting yourself down before you even got
exactly there. Yeah, so it's, I don't even know if that's like imposter, I guess it is, but it's like it's even worse.
Well, it's
I'll do you one better.
I'll do you one better. Infinitely forever the worst.
But yeah, I was just like, how did they get there? And in my head, I was like, they must have started out smarter than me,
Oh, yeah. So it's like you don't even think you had the skill set to begin with.
And
like it's so fake. Like you're just faking the role.
Yeah. And in nursing school is very competitive. And like in nursing school, most people, like, as you know, like I'm not a type A person, and like most nursing students, at least where I went to school, were very type A, or at least pretending to be.
Right.
And so, whenever I got into my nursing job, I kind of saw that again. Like I was like, wow, these people are so organized, they're so on top of it. Like I'm somebody who tends to like procrastinate. I'm somebody who doesn't have all my ducks in a row. And so I just didn't see like how I was ever going to get there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, just to show that it is in fact like imposter syndrome, once I got, a couple years down the road, like even I'd say like a year and a half in, or 2 years, like I was like feeling really good, feeling like I knew what I was talking about, feeling like I was still learning something new every day, and still didn't think like, oh, I know everything, but I felt very comfortable. I felt like I did feel prepared to like teach other people to be nurses and like things like that, and realized that like I do have a lot of knowledge, and like I learned a lot in nursing school, and then on the job I learned even more. And just looking back at the me who like was starting as a nurse, it's just crazy that I had no confidence in myself. Like I was just like, oh, I'm gonna have to just get through this. Like I'm never gonna like excel at this. And I think I like cried after like
you're
every
gonna have to fake it forever.
shift. Yeah, and I think I would come home and like cry, and I would just be like, oh, that was so rough. Like I was just so like nervous the whole time. I wasn't confident in myself at all. And looking back on that, it's just wild because at my last hospital job, like I went in every day like I wasn't nervous. Like I knew, I felt confident, I knew what I was doing. And I did get to that point that those people were at.
Do you think part of the reason you were able to get to that state of confidence with your last job was because you had worked there before? Or do you think it was because of like a journey within yourself?
No. What do you mean I had worked there?
Isn't that the place you had worked before? At the hospital? No. That was the one before that one.
Well, like I'm just saying like my PACU job. Like even
I was thinking of PACU.
Yeah. So like,
but not the one you had before, the one you have now. But the two ones before that.
Yeah, well, like both, but especially my main PACU job. Like, I'm just saying that, like, by the time I left there, like, I had just been in nursing so long that I felt very confident.
Yeah.
Or I hadn't been in there so long, but, like, at that job, like, I felt like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I, like, found my place, and I also, like, had the experience. And so, just like anyone else, like, I realized, like, yeah, like, I did do it, and I've arrived, like,
right.
I'm comfortable. I'm no longer feel, like, nervous and, like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And so, it was just really cool to, like, see that and be like, okay, like, I did it. I did what I thought I couldn't do.
Absolutely.
And made me realize that it really was just me like doubting myself and thinking that I couldn't be like all these other people,
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good point too, is like about time and like having more time there, I think makes a big difference, and like having experience under your belt. Like a lot of the times what we know about imposter syndrome is that it happens to people who are like early on in their careers or early on in like at this phase of life that they're in, like, it's like once you get more into your career, it's like hard to convince yourself that you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But like you're in the place that you're in because you have the credentials to be there. And it's like you wouldn't be where you are without that.
Yeah. And I think like giving yourself grace is a huge part of it, because
For sure.
I didn't like, I thought that I should come in and like be perfect immediately, because I was like 4 years of school, right? Like I should know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
like I should know all of this stuff, but it's just the book knowledge that you have. And, then you're going to actually like put it into practice. Same with like any degree you get, like school is not the same as the actual job.
Yeah.
And so you can practice as much as you want, but then once you actually are doing it, it's different.
It's a different world.
Yeah. But I think like giving yourself grace at any new job, or if you change careers, like several years in, it's going to happen again. Like if I went And, you know, I mean, I kind of am doing a different job, but it's like easier. But if, you know, if I made an entire career change and, you know, switch to doing something completely different, it would probably feel like that again. Because it's like doing anything new makes you feel that way, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But yeah, how have you experienced imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I was trying to think about a lot of different areas that I've experienced it in, because I think your career is probably one of those experiences that you like think about the quickest, because that's immediately like what I thought of it. I was like, yeah, obviously, like I don't. There are days like I think like you, like at the more time I'm in my field, I like feel more comfortable. So I'll start with my career and then I'll go backwards. Because there's like, I feel like I can find points in my life where I've definitely felt like an imposter. But like as a counselor, I think, and also like with the way, like, I think that the world has previously looked at counseling is like, unless you're like a therapist in like an addiction rehab center or like in a mental hospital, like, what are you doing? Like, that's, I think, the message that you get a lot. And so people are like, oh, like you just talk to people. And so I think sometimes it's hard not to hear those messages and to like take that on. I know that I've like struggled with that in the past. And like, I'm like, oh, well, I just talk to people. And it's like, no, like it's doing
like belittling what you do.
Exactly. And so it feels like I'm like, first of all, I'm belittling the career. And then like, second of all, I'm like, I have no skills. I'm just like, I just talk to people for a living. It's like, actually, no, like there's a lot, like I have a master's degree, like there, like that was not easy to get.
Yeah. It's like, what were you doing for all this?
Right. Like I was like in school for 6 years, like calm down. Like, you know, like it was harder than I like tell myself it was. And so like, I think as a counselor, I experience imposter syndrome a lot too. 'Cause like, there is that component of talking about it, but there's also a lot of other things that go on behind the scenes of just the conversation that's happening. There's a lot of like guiding and directing and like asking the right questions and like, you know, listening to what's going on underneath it and like, you know, pointing out things. And so it's also like very much like Giannis, my husband, has made like a really good point before. He's like, yeah, like you're sitting there like listening to somebody, but your brain is like working so hard.
Yeah,
because
that's
like
a really good point.
I would come home and I would be so tired and I'd be like, why am I tired? I'm like not doing anything. And he was like, no, like your brain is like working so hard.
Yeah.
And like I think that's kind of one of those areas where I'm like, I feel like I'm just faking it, like because I'm not like doing enough to be tired. It's like, first of all, who decides that?
Yeah, well, you are, so it doesn't. Yeah.
Right. And then I think the other part of it is like where I feel an imposter as a counselor is, you know, I think whenever, and I've talked about this with my supervisors, is talking about the like, because I think I get into my headspace like that a lot, and then I hear other people talking about like their counseling and like what they do, and I steer away from a lot of clinical language, like even in my sessions, because like I don't know, I don't take on a pathologizing lens, which is like I don't take on like a diagnosing lens as much, unless like asked for that, and then I will talk about that.
Yeah.
And then, but even from like that point of view, like I try not to use clinical terminology, because when I'm talking to clients, it's like, you know,
yeah,
it doesn't sound, it's like, it sounds better when I use language that like everybody uses versus like language that only like counselors use, right?
Yeah.
Like even the word validate is like one of those like words where like people aren't used to hearing that. And so instead of saying like, I validate that for you, I try to say more like, yeah, like it makes sense that you're feeling the way that you're feeling. Like that sounds a lot
talk
more
like they would talk.
common. Yeah. And so like, I think sometimes that gets into my head and I like, I'm thinking like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like sitting here like not like I'm just, I like have on this like mask and I'm pretending to be this counselor, and like, I actually like shouldn't even be here and I shouldn't even be talking to people, and like, you know, I shouldn't even be doing this job. Like what qualifications do I have? And it's like, a lot of the times too, like so I have 2 supervisors and I've talked to both of them about this, and they're like, Jolene, you are literally like in this position because we see like who you are, not only as a person, but as like a provider and a clinician. And they're like, we believe in you. Like, that's why we chose you. And like, it's crazy because my brain was still even like, but do they really see you? do they really know what it's like to be in a counseling room with you? And I'm like, no, they don't. And it's just like this battle inside my head where I'm constantly, and like it's gotten better, but I think it is like you said with for you, it's like time. But it's just that constant like battle of like, how do I actually like make sure I am like rejecting that voice, like no, like, and using their voices, like no, like I was chosen for this position, like because of my skill set, because of my education, because of who I am, you know?
Yeah.
And like,
and not comparing, like thinking, you know, like, yeah, I don't have the same skill set as like somebody else who has, you know, like just like
right.
Same in both
I don't
of our
have
careers.
an EMDR certification.
Right. And like somebody else might, but somebody else might not possess something like a quality that you have that makes you a good counselor.
Exactly.
And like that's the way that I feel in nursing. It's like I like one of my first jobs was like I learned a lot about the heart and like rhythms and like cardiac stuff. But then like other people like came from the ER, so I was like, ooh, they know what to do more than me in an emergency. But then when somebody was having like a funky like heart rhythm, like I knew what it was and they didn't. And so it's like, you know, everybody brings a different piece to the table,
right?
And I think that like same with counseling, like I feel like every counselor takes such a different approach.
Yeah.
And like you don't know, like your approach could work so much better for somebody than like somebody else who has more experience, because just because they have more experience doesn't mean they have like the same qualities that you have.
Right. And I think that's another thing too with counseling is it's so subjective. Like it's very much like the same way that you're not going to be friends with everybody, the same way you're not going to find a counselor that fits for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of like those big things too is, you know, what works for my supervisors may not be what works for me. And I have to find like, and I have like I have my clients, like I would say almost all of my clients like really like me, like not to toot my own horn or anything, but just want to throw that out there. But I think it's because like of the way that I like counsel. It's like the way that I connect, and like I find things that work for me and my clients, and like we have a good therapeutic alliance, but also like it's going to look different from like maybe like some of my peers in the way that they work with their clients. And so I do think because I haven't decided if I mean, I can work with trauma, but I haven't decided if I want to do more of like an EMDR and brain spotting approach to trauma. And I think that's probably because I'm doing a lot of like internal family systems and parts work. This is totally going off on a different tangent, but I'm doing a lot of internal family systems and parts work with trauma. And I find that to be really helpful, honestly. And whereas EMDR and brain spotting, I think it's very helpful, but I'm not sure I want to like actually go through the training and certification for that. And so I think I do compare myself to people who have that certification and training, and I see them as like better clinicians because they've taken the time to go get the training, to go do that. And for me, I like just haven't done that because that's just not really what I'm interested in as a clinician. And so that doesn't mean that I'm a bad clinician or that I don't belong where I am. It just means that like my interests are different.
Yeah. Well, because you chose not to do that like for a reason.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. But that's probably like, you know, that comparison piece that you talked about too. That's probably like where I see my imposter syndrome showing up the most with like counseling in my career. And I think that's like would be for any like situation, because I worked in a drug and alcohol center like for a few years before I switched to private practice. And I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing there either. And so, you know, like, and I mean, I was like a good therapist. It's that piece of also feeling like a good therapist is like, I think also being a good therapist is like knowing that you're doing good work. And I think that's what makes imposter syndrome hard, is like you're second guessing yourself to that point where you're like, am I doing good work? Because I don't know if I like am qualified to be in this position. And that's where like I think talking to people about it like comes in handy, because like which is like why I've talked to Giannis about it, I've talked to you about it, I've talked to my supervisors about it, my parents about it, I've talked to like everybody in my life about it.
It's nice to get lots of different opinions though too.
And I've had people be like, well, do you think it's because like I don't typically have a lot of structure in like my sessions as a counselor? And so that was like one of the feedbacks that was some of the feedback that I was given that actually did help me find a better footing and like did help me feel more secure in what I was doing. So, I mean, when you talk about it too, it's like some people can give you really solid feedback, but doesn't mean that you're not a good counselor. It just means like, how can we make you feel more secure in what you're providing?
Yeah.
But other areas of my life, I think, where I've seen imposter syndrome, because I do want to make sure that we note that it's not just in careers.
Definitely. Yeah.
But I think there's been times in my life where there's not been times. I think throughout my life, I've felt like an imposter as a friend. I know you and I've talked about this a lot. I know you've seen a lot. And so I think even with that, like there's been like times where I'm like, maybe I'm just like a bad friend. Like maybe I'm just like not a good friend. And like it may like, and like there's just like things, you know, that happen because I don't have like a lot of friends. I just, that sounded really sad. I just don't. I don't have a lot of friends. And that is because I'm not like great at communication and like seeking people out, which we've talked about before. This feels vulnerable. Yeah, I'm not great at
I feel like you're not good at communication. I don't agree with that.
Okay, see, like,
but
there it is again. There's my imposter syndrome showing up. She's like, "Hey, girl, you suck at communication," and like my literal closest friend is like, "You're not bad at it." Like,
yeah, no, I feel like you have really good communication.
Yeah. See, and like I think friendship is probably one of those areas I struggle with imposter syndrome the most. Is like my brain tells me like I'm not a good friend, and that's just not true. Like I've talked to a lot of people about it. I talked to my therapist about it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like one of those things. It's like when you go through something really hard with like friendships and like friends, and you know, it's like it makes you second guess yourself and like what you bring to the table as a friend. And so like sometimes when you have to like take a step away and like choose yourself, like it feels wrong because like that's not how you've been as a friend, or like, you know, you've been like very like, I don't know, giving and like prioritizing other people's needs. And I think that was part of like the people pleasing that we've talked about before, is where I've had to learn how to take a step back, is in friendships specifically.
Yeah. Is
like learning how to be like, okay, actually like this is enough. Like I need to like choose myself. And you know, so, and that doesn't make me an imposter as a friend, right? Like it just makes my priorities shift, right? It's like I'm choosing myself, and then therefore like the people that I get to be friends with when I like love myself more get to see like a more authentic version of like friendship, and like have a more real friendship with me, because I'm a very loyal person.
Yeah. Well, I think like friendship is some like friendship is something too where, you know, the comparison comes back in. Like for me too, is like sometimes I look at some of my friends that have so many friends,
huge friend groups,
and either big friend groups or just several like individual friends, and they're like, oh, I have this friend, that, you know. And sometimes like I'm like, how, like, you know, like I'm like, obviously I'm doing something wrong, right? Like why don't I have that many friends? And I think that, you know, like everybody is so different, like and unique, and like some people operate well in that way, like having that many friends, but then like some people don't. And like I think that like for those like I feel like for you probably like you, like I know you like having deep friendships, and so if somebody has like 20 friends and then they're gonna like include, like they're gonna, you know, have you be one of their friends, like you and them aren't gonna like align very well, because you're gonna be thinking like, okay, this is gonna be like a deep friendship, like we're gonna be like you know,
that's
like get to know each other very well, and then like that person's just like, oh, maybe like every now and then, like, you know, we'll go see a movie together. You know?
I'm like, because I know not okay.
I know that's happened to me before, like where like I've had friends that are just like they're wanting a lot of like, I don't mean shallow in a negative way, but like shallow friends, like, you know, like
easy maintenance,
like like just like acquaintances more, like, and like I don't do well with that because I want to know like everything about your life.
Same. I don't know if that's like an attachment style thing.
I don't know if that's good, but it's true about both of us.
That's why we're good friends,
right? But it's like, you know, like I want to know like everything about what's going on in your life, like, and I don't want to like just like know, you know, like how your day was today and then be like, cool, okay, see you in a couple of weeks. And so I think that that's another thing too, is that like some people don't have that like deep connection, and instead they have like 20 friends, you know?
Yeah.
And that's fine if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like what you said about how like different people have different needs, and so for some people, like that actually satisfies their needs for that, and then I think, but that's why there's different people, because like I have a need for like really like deep friendships, and like especially if like it's changing, and like we had a deep friendship, and I don't have a deep friendship, or like, you know, something's happening, like, and I'm just like, I don't feel secure in the friendship anymore. It's like hard for me to continue to maintain that friendship, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm pretty verbally honest about those things. So, but I think that I have found like
Verbally honest.
I'm very physically honest as well. I was like, what would be the opposite of verbal?
I know, I was
physical?
trying to think that too.
But I mean, I was like, you can tell when I'm taking a step back. Like, it's not like I don't hide it. But I do think that I have found a lot of like healing in like my friendship with you with imposter syndrome, because like, you know, I don't know, I just feel like you see me and like you validate me as a friend, and like it feels really good, and like, just to be your friend. So
yeah, I agree in the same way. I think like it's really comforting being able to like be in a friendship where like somebody, you can tell somebody like, you know, the way that you truly feel, and like they're able to like handle it and not take like, I feel like that's the biggest thing for me, like in like friendships. Like I know we're on like off on a different tangent now on friendship. But I'm just saying, like, it's like, you know, it feels really good to have friends who you're able to like tell your honest thoughts, and they can handle it, and they're not thinking just of like themselves and, you know, the way that they're thinking about that. They're like letting you be you and thinking, you know, like, okay, like what is that like for her? Like that's what I feel like with our friendship. I feel like when I'm telling you something, like you're not thinking of the way you would think of it and being like, no, I don't agree. Like you're letting me be my own person and like supporting it, you know, unless it's something that's clearly like detrimental to my like, you know, there's been times where you're like, well, I don't know. There's always that.
Maybe
that
we should think about this in a different way.
Yeah. But it's like, you know, as long as you feel like it's like healthy and, you know.
I don't feel like we try to change the way the other person thinks, which in and of itself, like, you know, is a validating experience as a friend. And like for me, that I think that's part of like why like you've I think unknowingly helped heal like my imposter syndrome as a friend. Aww. Yeah, sweet baby, I love you so much.
I love you.
And like, because
like I'm gonna cry.
I know. I'm like trying to like keep my voice up here so that way it doesn't. But I mean, really though, like as a friend, you've validated me just like in my own thoughts, and I truly have never felt like you've tried to change me, which is
I don't want to change you.
Yeah, thank you.
I love you just the way you are.
Thank you. Stop. Yeah, no, I mean, and it's like so important, you know, like I don't feel bad when I talk to you about things that I like am sharing with you. Like if I'm just like venting to you, you're not like, well, it's not that big of a deal. And it's like, like I was like, okay, but it's like, but it's a big deal to me. And like you acknowledge that and you don't try to change that. And I think those are like unspoken things that I think validate me as a friend. And
I think that brings up like a really good point, like, which is what we're talking about. Like, it's like, that is one of the ways that you can, like that helps with imposter syndrome a lot. Like having a friend who is validating you and is not telling you, you know, that what you're going through or something that you're trying to tell them, you know, like invalidating, like having people in your life that like invalidate you is going to make imposter syndrome like so much worse.
Yeah.
And just like spur it on, because they're going to tell you that, you know, you're, you know, like maybe you're not, like if you're telling them, hey, I feel like I'm not doing a good job like in my career or in my relationship or in this friendship, like they're going to be like, yeah, okay, like what could we do better? Like, because it sounds like you are doing a bad job. And sometimes that's like not what you need. And I think that's a good point that you bring up about like our friendship. It's like, I feel like some people think it's like a good friend move to, you know, always give advice and try to help fix. But it's like sometimes I feel like you need that friend who's like going to tell you like, actually, no, like I feel like that you're just not giving yourself grace or any compassion. Like, it's not that you actually need to do. And sometimes, I mean, if like, of course, I want you to be honest with me. Like, if you think there's something that I can, change that would like help, but it's like, whenever there's not, it's nice to have somebody like validate you and say like, actually, no, like, yeah, I think you're doing a great job and that you're being really hard on yourself, because I don't think a lot of people, like, I feel like us included, are really bad at being kind to themselves. And so like sometimes your friendships and your family and people like that is like who you need to like come to your side and be like, hey, like, actually you're doing incredible and you just need to like give yourself a break.
Yeah,
because I know I'm hard on myself sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that that's something we do well, is also like, I think that's something that Tiffany and I both really, you and I, love about having deep friendships, is that we see each other.
Yeah.
And like we see all of it. We don't just see like, you don't just see me like having lots of client hours at work and like working like a lot and like making money and like then I'm all of a sudden like, yeah, I don't feel like I'm doing good. And then you'd be like, well, what could that would even be? But like, you're like, yeah, you should probably do like less hours at work or something like that, because it's like, I think it's more of like, hey, like, you're doing enough. Like,
yeah,
you are doing enough. And like having just somebody be like, hey, like, that's okay that you feel that way. And I also want you to know, like, I see you and I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're fine. But.
And something that I've liked that my therapist has said that, kind of talking about, friends doing that, like, is, or maybe it's something that I don't know who told me about this, but I've heard it somewhere. Maybe it was in that book we read, The Mountain Is You. I don't know.
I love that book.
Somebody has said before, sometime in life, to me, like, to think about, like, what somebody you love would like say to you.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it actually is in The Mountain Is You.
Yeah. I don't know. It's in some book that I've read, or something that I've read. And it just really like struck me, because that's something that like, I've actually not done it that much and I should do it more. But it's like, in that, whenever I saw that, I was like, that's so true, because the way that, like, I talk to myself is like not the way that like you would talk to me, or somebody that I love would talk to me. It's like a lot of times it's such a harsh, like, my internal voice towards myself is often like very, very harsh. And I feel like changing that and making it more compassionate, like, can go a long way. Yeah,
I completely agree. And I'm going to move along out of friendship.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, I want to make sure we're cognizant of time, because I just realized we spent a lot of time on friendship.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because it's so relatable too. I think with imposter syndrome, that's a big part of the reason I wanted to bring it up with imposter syndrome, is that it is like, it affects other aspects of our life and aspects we don't really think about, like comparing. And I liked the fact that you brought up earlier too, that comparison around like how you see other people having friends. And so, yeah, I think it's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight it. And then another reason I get imposter syndrome is like tennis. So I like am.
Sorry.
No, say it.
I was gonna say the other ones were like so serious, and then like you're like, and then like tennis, and it's just not what I was expecting.
Well, yeah. I was like, well, I want to say too, like in other areas, like it goes from like very serious to like, it also affects like the less serious aspects of ourselves and keeps us from doing things that we might potentially like. Like, I think of tennis, like, because that's like an area where I like second guessed myself a lot. Like, I was a really good player in high school. And like, I had the potential to get like a scholarship and like play, and then things happened. Well, things happened as in like I had a tumor in my spinal cord.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, are you referring to that tumor in your spine?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm referring to. So I had a tumor, and then like I like obviously had to get surgery and like had to get that removed, because that's not
wasn't gonna do good things in there.
Yeah, that's not. It was benign, but not really.
She benign.
She benign. Okay.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, so I had a tumor, and then they had to get it removed, and
you had to get it removed.
I couldn't remove it. The surgeons had
to. Got it.
They had to get that tumor out of there.
Okay.
Well, I had to get it removed from my body. and they removed it from my body. The surgeons did. But anyways, after that,
just glad we made that clarification.
Yes. I did not perform surgery on my body, nor did somebody else have a tumor. That I mean, sure, other people. Anyways,
right.
But anyways, I had the tumor, and then like I was like very active before the tumor and played a lot of tennis, and like I'm still active now. But one of the things that was majorly affected by the tumor is like my left leg is like numb, and well, not numb, but like it has a lack of proprioception, which just means like you don't know where it is in space. So like if I like put my arm out here and close my eyes, I know exactly where my arm is in relation to my body. But if I put my like left foot out there, I really don't know where it is.
It's just out there.
It's just out there. She's floating. And like it affects the way like you run, it affects the way like you play tennis. Like tennis is a lot of like movements with like
your little legs.
Yeah, like with my little legs and feet, and you know, my foot was a lot worse. It was my left foot, and so my foot's a lot worse like than my like leg altogether. But it goes down like my leg, and well, I was gonna give a more explanation on that, but I don't feel like there needs to be one. It just affects my left leg and my foot. So after surgery, when I had a recovery period, and then I tried to get out and play tennis again, and it was really hard to find my like footing and my balance. And I mean, and I know that this is like a little bit more serious than like I probably meant for it to be, but after that, I really like just started doubting myself as a tennis player. I like, and not like I was like, I identified as a tennis player, but like tennis was a big part of my life before the tumor. And I like couldn't move as well as I used to, and like movement in tennis is really important. And this is actually something I've like been thinking about lately. And like one of the reasons I've gotten into tennis again recently. But after it happened, I like just kind of stopped playing tennis altogether, because I like was like, well, I'm not gonna be as good. I'm just not a good player, you know. And I like told myself I wasn't a good player because of my like leg, and like I was like, that's why, like, you know,
like stopped trying.
Yeah, I just stopped trying, and like I used it as an excuse not to play. And I told myself, well, it's like I'm never gonna be as good as I was. And like I think believing, and even before I had the tumor, I just didn't think that I was like a great player. But I like everyone, like a lot of people I talked to were like, you're so good. Like you could do, and like I had a coach, and he was like, yeah, you should go for the scholarships. And he offered me a scholarship, and then all that happened. And I like stopped playing because I didn't think that I was good anymore, and I didn't think I could be good, but I never tried. And it's because that imposter syndrome was so loud that it's like, you're just going to try to go out there and like play, and like, you're not going to do it. You're going to like suck. You're going to trip. You're going to fall over on your own leg. And you know, I think that has a little bit more to it than the imposter syndrome, but like I truly believed it like up until like this last year of my life, where I like just didn't play. I like wouldn't play with people because I was like, no, like I don't even want to get out there and try to play and like experience like the disappointment that I would feel when I would have played in the past. And then I was like writing about like my experience before I had the tumor, and I like realized how active I had been before I had the tumor, and like and like I was like playing tennis like almost every day beforehand, and then like it just stopped all of a sudden. And so after that, I was like I should just get back out there and play, and I just like shouldn't care if I'm like good or not. Like you know, I know the skills, like I know what I'm doing. And so it was a lot of that too. Like, I know what I'm doing. It's like, not that I like don't know how to play tennis. I grew up learning how to play tennis. Like I know how to play. It's just like, yeah, it's okay if I like fumble a little bit or like I can't run, but like my feet are super strong. Like my legs are really strong. Like I really don't have that much trouble with like my leg at all, and like my foot at all. But
so you're like proving yourself wrong.
Exactly. And like, I refuse to accept the fact that like, I refuse to like let that get in my way, like, because I'm just like accepting it for something that it's not. Like I just like was believing a lie that my brain was telling me. It was like, you're not going to be able to play as good. And it's like, I don't play tennis to become a pro. Like that's not realistic for me. I'm 20, like I'm almost 27. Like that's out of the picture. And like, I don't think that was ever a part of the picture, but I do think like was good enough to know how to play, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of playing tennis. Like I have so much fun when I play tennis, and I realized that. Yeah. Like, and I took that away from myself because I was like, you're not going to be good
just because you might be like a little bit not as good or
yeah,
something.
like I was like thinking it'd be embarrassing, and I was like, I don't like judge other people when they're out there and they're like missing the ball. Now I may laugh, but like I like laugh at my own self, like when I like try to hit a home run instead of like hitting it in the court.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like one of those things too, where I think imposter syndrome also affects like the way you like go about your life and the way you choose to do things. Like,
yeah, it really holds you back.
Exactly. Yeah. And like it kept me from trying for years. Like I just didn't see it as worth it.
Yeah, that's a really good example because it just shows how like you took something that you loved like away from yourself. Like nobody else did that. Nobody told you like you couldn't play tennis and that you suck or anything. Like you did that to yourself. And
I did. I did that to myself.
I know this sounds harsh, but it's a good,
No,
it really,
it's
I
true.
just want to point that out, you know, like it's like, and then you're giving it back to yourself, which is the good part of it. But you know, it's like, it's one of those things that it's a really good example because it shows how like you're in charge. Like, you know, you told yourself, no, like I actually, you came to your own conclusion that like you can do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is like takes me to like the cause and effects of imposter syndrome is like it causes you to get in your head and doubt yourself. Like I doubted myself for like 10 years. It literally has been 10 years. And like, so I have like not played, like, I mean, I've played tennis on and off, but like I haven't been as active as I've been lately with it.
Yeah.
And like, I have been having so much fun because I'm just like letting that idea go. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to give that idea weight anymore. And I'm just going to play because like I was taught how to play. And like, that's all, like, I feel like for me with the imposter syndrome, like that's all that I needed to do. It's like, yeah, I may not be like freaking like Serena Williams. Like I'm not going to be the US #1 for a long time. But like, and she's not #1 anymore cuz she's retired. But like, I mean, I'm not going to be like Serena Williams out there. Like, but I am like going to enjoy it. Like, and that's I think what I forget too with like sports is like it tells us, our brains tell us like you have to do well, you have to compete well, and it's like just no.
It's not always about success. And
yeah, it's just like stop doubting yourself and just let yourself have fun. And like I think what you'll find is like when you're having fun, you're actually probably doing better.
Yeah.
And then another one of effects is like it doesn't create confidence or build self-worth, which I think is like goes back to that tennis example. And with friendships is like I haven't felt confident pursuing friendships because of like things that have happened. And you know, building that self-worth is like a journey.
Yeah I think with the like confidence thing, it's just which I think that's what we're talking about next, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so we'll go
next week's pod.
We won't go crazy talking about confidence right now because we'll take all of our material. but yeah, no, it as far as imposter syndrome goes, like I think it having a lack of confidence like really gives more power to like imposter syndrome and feeling like you're not good enough and you're not, you know, worthy. And that's the thing is that, you know, one of the things we were going to talk about next is like something that I wanted to talk about is just like how important it is. Like I know that, you know, one of the important things about if you have a lack of like self-worth that can attribute to imposter syndrome, and like if you don't feel like you're like we have at the beginning we were talking about how it's like deserving, like feeling like you don't deserve it,
right?
It's like, you know, like you're saying about tennis, you know, like it's, you realize that it's not about, you know, the success and the scholarships and stuff like that anymore, but it is about like enjoying your life and also making you feel good about yourself and you know, it's healthy and all that. And so it's like finding your reasons and sometimes getting to the root of why don't you feel like you deserve, you know, whatever it is, can be really helpful because that can bring up some things, you know, that make you realize like something more about yourself. Like it's a lot in the way of learning about yourself.
Yeah, you're confronting yourself.
Yeah, confront your mind. But yeah, it's like it's confronting that thought of like sometimes it can be like a really bad thought that you find, but you know, it's like, why don't you think you deserve to do something that you enjoy? Because that's not good.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like that. And like going into it too, it's like adding positive self-talk onto it. Like we are so, I love what you said earlier, like we're so hard on ourselves, and like we would not talk to ourselves the way we would talk to our friends. And like if you do talk to yourself the way you talk to your friends, like good, like I hope it's like you're really like nice to yourself. But I think part of that positive self-talk is just like validating yourself and like letting yourself have that experience, and like just not trying to make it something it's not. You know, I think for me, I was making my like a leg to be this like huge barrier, and it wasn't. It like was not even a barrier. It was just a leg. Like it's just a leg. Like that's all it is. And you know, like yeah, it may not be the same like experience that Tiffany has with her leg, but it doesn't mean that like my leg is any less capable of it. Like you know, like not to like be weird and like weird or like rude, but like I mean like, you know, like I'm like I have like a numb leg, and like I'm probably a better tennis player than Tiffany, and it's not because have
experience.
Yeah, and it's not because she has a fully functioning like left leg. It's because I was taught long before I had any problems how to play tennis.
Yeah.
And like,
and that's the cool thing is like our bodies are like incredible, and so you can learn around it.
Oh yeah, like it's been amazing, like playing again, like seriously playing again, and like actually like enjoying it, and like watching my body like learn how to move with it. And so like it's been really special, because I think I was just making it this big thing in my head before, and like I was like, oh, my leg is getting in the way, oh, my foot, I just can't feel it. And it's like, yeah, like it's sad, and like, but it doesn't like have to be sad. Like I get to choose how I look at my leg, and I'm gonna choose to like be like, you're still rock baby, like you're still functioning, like look at you go, like play that tennis, baddie, like, you know, like, and like why not? Like why would I not do that? Like why would I sit there and be like, I just have a bum left leg? It's like when I can get to like, and like I'm fortunate to be able to be active.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean, like if it, you know, like it could have been that like you weren't able to actually play, like the fact that you can play and be good at it still like is incredible. So like you should.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another part of it too is like, you know, how to confront this imposter syndrome is like sharing your fears around it. You know, I think whether that's in therapy, or like whether that's like with like friends and family, or like whether that's like writing in your journal. Like I mean, I found out like what I experienced with tennis like through like writing, and then I found out with like friendship, like with Tiffany, and like with counseling, I talked to my supervisors about it, you know, and like also friendship, I talked to my therapist. I had a lot of therapy around like friendship, imposter syndrome. But you know, I think like talking to people, like not giving it that voice, you know. I think, because sometimes, and this might sound weird, but sometimes it's really good just to like tell that voice like shut up, like you don't know what you're talking about.
And like challenge your own thoughts, like
confront your mind.
I was gonna say it's like it's a good example of it, really, because challenging your own thoughts and not just letting them, you know, like not believing everything that you hear yourself say, you know, like don't tell yourself like I can't play tennis anymore, and then just be like, oh, okay, I guess I can't. That's true.
Right.
You know, like
literally what I did for 10 years. I was like, facts.
But, you know,
I'm not going to argue.
But instead, you know, like challenge that thought. And again, it does help to like write it out and be like, okay, like write out your thought. Like, I can't play tennis anymore. And say like, okay, well, why? Am I sure about that? Like, you know, if it's something that upsets you and you wish you could change, like see if you can, like give it a try.
Absolutely. Like that's like what we love. I'm gonna speak for both of us, but I think that's like what we love about the mind is that it is such a strong tool that you can have so much plasticity with it. And like it doesn't have to be one way. Like if you're not happy, that can change. If you're not satisfied, you can change that, and it starts with your mind. Which is like why we do the podcast.
That's very true.
Well, I think that's everything.
I think it is.
All right.
And next week we're going to be talking about confidence.
Yes, which kind of goes into imposter syndrome, is like having that confidence. So, we'll cover confidence and have fun there. And then, so thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for being here.
And follow us.
Yes. At Confront Your Mind, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify.
We're not on Twitter because we don't like that. And that's just us, though. Obviously. Anything else? Oh, and all other like streaming platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, like give us a follow, subscribe. Did we say TikTok?
Share. Yeah, I did.
Okay. Yeah. Email.
Oh yeah, confrontyourmind@gmail.com.
Hit us up. Give us ideas if you have any.
Start a conversation.
Let's chat. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts. Let's chat. Can I pull you for a chat? I'm going to be on The Bachelor. I want my brother and sister to go on The Bachelor. I haven't told them this, so if they listen to this podcast, this will be the first time they hear it. But Emmy and Noah, please go on The Bachelor so that I can be on TV. I want to be one of the family members that has to talk to the hometowns. Yeah.
Can I pull you aside for a minute?
Can I chat with you? But yeah, remember that we're all learning.
And don't be afraid to get confrontational this week.
Keep it cute until we meet again.